Hello boys and girls, Pablum FishPig here to read you another simple story. This one's called The Princess. Once there was a prince who went to his father and said, "I want to marry Rose." His father said, "Who is Rose?" And he said, "She is the girl I want to marry." And his father said, "Why do you want to marry her?" And he said, "Because I like the shape of her face." So his father said, "Well, you can't." And he said, "Why not?" And his father said, "Because I have just arranged for you to marry a very nice princess." And he said, "What princess?" His father said, "I forget her name, but she is the daughter of a king who is very rich, and I owe him some money." So the prince went away very sad, and when he had gone the king clapped his hands together, and his caitiff came to him and touched the ground with his forehead and said, "Salaam." And the king said, "Bring me my hookah." And when he had brought him his hookah, he said, "Do you know a girl called Rose?" And he said, "Yes." And the king said, "Well, put her in a dungeon." So the caitiff touched the ground with his forehead again and said, "Amen," and went out. Well, that evening the prince went to Rose's house and asked for her, and her mother said, "She is not here." And he said, "Where is she?" And she said, "I don't know." So the prince was very sad, and that night at the banquet he could not eat any of the rich and delicate viands, but drank a little iced sherbet flavored with pineapple, because his father was looking at him. And after the banquet he went out into the garden, which was very lovely, and had 1,000,000 roses in it, and a great many bulbuls, which is what they called nightingales. And they were all singing, and it was very lovely, but the prince said, "I would rather hear Rose's bulbul than any of these. I think I will go indoors." Now Rose had a tame nightingale, which she had taught to speak, and directly the prince had said, "I think I will go indoors," he heard a voice, and it said, "Rose is here." So he knew it was Rose's nightingale, and he said, "Where?" And it said, "In the dungeon." So the prince rescued Rose out of the dungeon, and he put her on a swift Arab steed and fled with her into the desert. Well, they came to a small oasis where there was a well and a palm tree with some dates on it, but when they had eaten all the dates they were very hungry, and the prince said, "If somebody doesn't come soon we shall die." And Rose was very brave and said, "Oh well, never mind." Well, just as they were going to die, they saw a caravan coming with plenty of camels and dromedaries, and it was the caravan of the princess who was coming to marry the prince. The princess was a little old, but she was very nice. The prince did not tell her who he was at first, but he told her that he wanted to marry Rose, and his father wouldn't let him, so he had fled with her into the desert. And the princess said, "Quite right, and you shall marry Rose. I will see to it." The prince said, "Thank you." And the princess said, "I like weddings and used to play at them when I was a very little girl, and I brought my private clergyman with me, and if you don't mind my religion being a little different, he can marry you now if you like. I expect it will count, but if not, you can be done again when you get home." So the prince was married to Rose, and the princess gave him a lovely caboose with rubies and emeralds for a wedding present, and she gave Rose a shawl to go on with, and said she would give her something more when her camels were unpacked. So the next day the prince told the princess who he was, and she said, "Oh well, it can't be helped now, and you are a little young for me. Perhaps I can marry your father. It would be a pity not to marry somebody, as I have come so far." So the princess married the king, because his wife was dead, and anyhow he was allowed by his religion to have as many wives as he liked, if he didn't have too many and was kind to all of them. And he forgave the prince for marrying Rose, and he said, "She is very nice, and I don't think you could have done better." The end.